I had always loved grilling. There was something about the smell of sizzling steaks, the sound of crackling charcoal, and the simple joy of cooking outdoors that made my backyard feel like an escape. My home, tucked inside a well-manicured neighborhood governed by an overbearing HOA, seemed like the perfect place to enjoy my passion. That was until the day I received a letter in the mail that made my blood boil. It was a formal notice from the Homeowners Association, informing me that my barbecue grill was in violation of their community guidelines. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. I had been using my grill for years without a single complaint, and nowhere in the original HOA agreement did it explicitly say that grilling was forbidden. But according to the letter, a new bylaw had recently been passed banning all open-flame cooking devices unless they were permanently attached to a gas line and met specific, nearly impossible, requirements. Even worse, the letter demanded that I remove my grill immediately or face escalating fines. The audacity of it stunned me. I had purchased my home with the assumption that I had the right to enjoy my own backyard, and now a group of busybodies was telling me I couldn't cook a steak on my own property? Furious, I decided to push back. I attended the next HOA meeting, armed with facts about local property laws and fire safety regulations, ready to argue my case. But as soon as I walked in, I realized that this was not a fair fight. The board members sat at a long table, looking down at homeowners like they were rulers addressing peasants. When I voiced my concerns, they dismissed me without consideration, smugly pointing to their newly revised rulebook and reminding me that I had signed a contract when I moved in. It didn't matter that the rule had only just been created. It didn't matter that I had already been grilling for years without a problem. They had the power, and they were making it very clear that they intended to use it. I could feel the stares of my neighbors, some sympathetic, others silently approving of the board's actions. That was when I realized something critical: this wasn't just about my grill. This was about control. If they could take away my right to cook a simple meal in my own backyard, what else could they decide? I wasn't just going to accept their ruling and move on. No, if they wanted to play this game, I was going to make them regret ever challenging me. The wheels in my head started turning, and as I walked out of that meeting, I already had a plan forming. They had no idea what was coming next. Leaving that HOA meeting, I refused to be just another homeowner bullied into submission. They thought banning my grill would force me to comply, but they had no idea they had just ignited something far bigger. If they wanted to take away my simple barbecue, I was going to take things to an entirely new level. I wasn't just going to replace my grill, I was going to build the most elaborate outdoor kitchen this neighborhood had ever seen, and I was going to do it in a way that they couldn't stop. I spent the next several weeks meticulously researching property rights, municipal codes, and loopholes in the HOA's own bylaws. If they were going to use technicalities against me, I was going to beat them at their own game. I consulted legal experts, city zoning officials, and even looked into case studies where homeowners had successfully outmaneuvered overreaching associations. That was when I found my golden ticket. While the HOA had banned portable barbecue grills and open-flame devices, there was nothing in their rulebook that prohibited a fully installed outdoor kitchen with a permanent foundation. In fact, the bylaws specifically allowed for architectural expansions of homes, provided they were professionally designed and structurally sound. This meant that if I played my cards right, they wouldn't be able to stop me from installing something much bigger than a simple backyard grill. With that knowledge in hand, I moved to the next step, designing my dream outdoor kitchen. I wasn't going to half-measure this. If I was going to spend the time and money, I was going to go all out. I hired a licensed contractor who specialized in outdoor living spaces, making sure that every inch of the design was legally sound. The plans included a stone pizza oven, a high-end gas grill connected to the home's main gas line, a smokeless wood-burning barbecue pit, a granite countertop prep area, and even a built-in beer tap and refrigerator. To ensure everything was permitted, I got approval directly from the city, which overruled any authority the HOA thought they had. Once the blueprints were finalized, I secured all necessary permits, making it impossible for the HOA to claim I was violating any zoning laws. When the construction phase began, I made sure it was as visible as possible to every single neighbor in the community. The moment workers arrived with cement, stone, and stainless steel appliances, the gossip spread like wildfire. HOA board members started showing up to inspect the site, their faces growing redder with every visit. They tried everything they could to find a way to halt the construction, but every time they challenged me, I presented a stack of legally binding documents proving that I had followed every rule to the letter. They couldn't touch me. The best part? The more they tried to interfere, the more obvious it became to the entire neighborhood that their power wasn't as absolute as they had made it seem. Homeowners who had once feared retaliation from the HOA started asking questions, and some even cheered me on in secret. It was becoming clear that this wasn't just about me anymore, this was about sending a message. I was doing what no one else had dared to do, standing up to them and winning. The HOA had taken my grill, and in response, I was building a backyard paradise that would make them regret ever messing with me. As the construction of my outdoor kitchen progressed, the HOA's frustration boiled over into sheer desperation. What had started as a petty power move to remove a simple barbecue grill had now become an all-out war, and they were losing. Every day, workers arrived at my property, laying stone, installing fixtures, and turning my backyard into something that looked more like a luxury restaurant than a private residence. My neighbors watched in awe as the sleek countertops, massive smoker, and pizza oven took shape. Some even stopped by to compliment the work, clearly envious of what was unfolding right before them. Meanwhile, the HOA was scrambling behind the scenes, trying to find a way, any way, to bring my project to a screeching halt. Their first move was predictable. They sent me a cease and desist letter, claiming that my construction was a violation of community standards. I took one look at the letter, laughed, and filed it directly into the trash. It had no legal backing, and they knew it. The next tactic was far more aggressive. The HOA president personally came to my property, arms crossed, accompanied by another board member who stood there nodding along like a parrot. They insisted that my outdoor kitchen was an unapproved modification and demanded that I halt construction immediately. I smiled, handed them a copy of the legally approved permits from the city, and watched their smug expressions crumble into silent rage. The best part was seeing the realization dawn on them: they had no power here. Their anger turned into pettiness. Over the next few days, I started receiving violation notices for absurd reasons. First, they claimed my contractors' work vehicles were blocking the street, even though they were parked legally. Then they cited me for excessive noise during construction, despite the fact that work was only being done during permitted hours. The most ridiculous complaint accused me of creating a fire hazard, an ironic claim considering my project followed all fire safety guidelines, while their original rule banning grills was based on nothing but paranoia. I knew exactly what they were trying to do. They wanted to frustrate me into giving up. But instead of getting angry, I used it to my advantage. Every time they sent a complaint, I made sure to document everything, keeping meticulous records of every interaction, every violation notice, and every baseless accusation. When the HOA realized their intimidation tactics weren't working, they switched to legal threats. They attempted to push through an emergency bylaw amendment, one that would retroactively restrict excessive outdoor cooking installations. This was their last, desperate attempt to stop me, but they had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated how much the other homeowners were watching. By this point, my battle with the HOA had become the talk of the entire neighborhood. Homeowners who had once stayed silent now saw what was really happening. Many had grievances of their own, but they had always been too afraid to push back. But now, they saw someone fighting and winning. When the HOA held their special vote to try and ban my outdoor kitchen, residents showed up in record numbers to vote against it. The board was shocked. Their usual tactics of sneaking rules past an uninformed community had failed. By the time my outdoor kitchen was nearly complete, it was clear that the HOA had lost control of the narrative. The more they tried to stop me, the more they exposed themselves as petty tyrants grasping at straws. My kitchen was unstoppable, my legal position ironclad, and their once feared authority was crumbling before their eyes. But I wasn't done yet. I had one final move to make, one that would cement my victory and humiliate them forever. As the final touches were completed on my outdoor kitchen, I realized that simply winning this battle wasn't enough. I needed to make a statement, one that would be impossible for the HOA to ignore. They had tried to take away my simple backyard grill, and in response, I had built a fully loaded outdoor kitchen that not only defied their authority but also became the talk of the neighborhood. Now, it was time for the ultimate act of defiance, a massive grand opening celebration that would make them regret ever messing with me. I planned the event meticulously, ensuring it would be as public and extravagant as possible. I sent out invitations to every single homeowner in the neighborhood, even the ones who had sided with the HOA. Flyers mysteriously found their way into mailboxes, and social media buzzed with excitement. The menu was carefully crafted to showcase every single thing they had tried to take away from me: grilled steak, smoked ribs, wood-fired pizzas, even fresh seafood sizzling on the high-end gas grill they had no power to remove. I hired a professional chef to assist, ensuring the food was restaurant quality. The night before the event, I set up a dazzling display of outdoor string lights, high-end seating, and even a custom banner that read "The grill is mightier than the HOA." When the day of the event arrived, the turnout was even bigger than I expected. Dozens of neighbors showed up, many bringing their own drinks, sides, and chairs, turning it into a block party unlike anything the neighborhood had ever seen. The smells of slow-cooked brisket and fresh, fire-roasted vegetables filled the air, making it impossible for even the most bitter HOA members to ignore. Families who had never spoken up against the HOA mingled freely, discussing all the ridiculous rules they had put up with over the years. Homeowners who had been too afraid to speak out before were now openly laughing at the board's failed attempt to shut me down. The best part? The HOA members themselves were forced to watch from a distance, fuming as the very people they claimed to represent enjoyed the very thing they had tried to ban. At one point, the HOA president stormed over, red-faced and fuming. He tried to confront me, hissing that I was violating the integrity of the neighborhood. I simply smiled, handed him a plate of food, and said, "It's all legal. Would you like some ribs?" The sheer look of defeat on his face was priceless. With the entire community watching, he had no choice but to back off. Some people actually cheered when he left, further cementing how much support I had gained. The event went on late into the evening, filled with laughter, food, and neighbors who, for the first time in a long time, felt like they had taken something back from the HOA. The best part was knowing that this wasn't just about the party, it was about the lasting impact it had on the community. The fear of the HOA was fading, and the realization that they could be challenged was spreading. By the time the night ended, I knew that my battle was won. The HOA had not only failed to stop me, but their own actions had led to their downfall. Their once intimidating presence in the neighborhood was now a joke, and the community was no longer blindly following their rules. But I still had one final move left to ensure they would never pull something like this again. The grand opening of my outdoor kitchen had been an undeniable success, but I wasn't done yet. The HOA had spent months trying to control me, intimidate me, and bury me in bogus rules. I had beaten them at every turn, but I wanted to make sure that their power over the neighborhood would never recover. I had one final move to make, and this time, I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for every homeowner they had ever bullied. The community had woken up after my event. Homeowners who had spent years quietly accepting ridiculous HOA fines and arbitrary rules suddenly realized they didn't have to live in fear anymore. At the next HOA meeting, for the first time in history, the residents outnumbered the board members. People who had never dared to question the HOA before were suddenly demanding answers. Why had they wasted so much time and effort trying to stop me from grilling? Why did they keep creating rules that no one had agreed to? And most importantly, why were they still in charge when no one wanted them there? The HOA board, once smug and untouchable, was visibly shaken. They tried to argue that they were acting in the best interest of the community, but that excuse didn't hold up anymore. People started digging into the HOA's financials, questioning how their fees were being spent. The more we uncovered, the worse it got. Excessive administrative costs, unexplained expenses, And even dubious fines that seemed to target certain homeowners more than others, it was all there, hidden in plain sight. Some residents who had blindly supported the HOA before suddenly turned against them when they realized they had been paying for nonsense this entire time. I saw my opportunity and took it. With the momentum on my side, I organized a petition to vote out the entire HOA board and elect new members who would actually represent the community. According to the bylaws, if I could get enough signatures, we could force a vote to either overhaul the board or dissolve the HOA entirely. It was a long shot, but I wasn't the only one fed up. Within weeks, I had more than enough support to push the vote forward. When the day of the special election arrived, the HOA was powerless to stop it. They had spent so much energy fighting over my grill that they hadn't realized the entire community had turned against them. The results were brutal. Every single board member was voted out, replaced by homeowners who actually wanted fair and reasonable governance. And then came the final decision: should the HOA be dissolved completely? The vote was overwhelming. The people had spoken, and the answer was yes. With that single decision, the HOA ceased to exist. Their rules, their power, their ability to fine and harass people over petty nonsense, it was all gone. The ridiculous restrictions they had spent years enforcing vanished overnight. People were free to do what they wanted with their own homes, and no one could tell them otherwise. As for me, I kept my outdoor kitchen and kept on grilling, knowing that I had done more than just win a petty feud. I had completely dismantled the corrupt system that had tried to control me. My backyard had become a symbol of defiance, a reminder that homeowners had rights, and that bullies only have power if you let them. In the end, I didn't just take back my right to grill. I took back the entire neighborhood.